Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good afternoon. So we shall continue for our lecture this afternoon. Okay, so to begin with, we have already looked at the commercialization pathways in terms of the examples that I've personally gone through in our previous lecture. Right, so for today, I'm going to explain the theory behind it in terms of the detail of the pathways available for commercialization. So as usual, in terms of the learning outcomes, so at the end of this session, the 30-minute session, you should be able to identify paths for commercialization, right? And at the same time, explain the needs for commercialization. So there are three paths for commercialization. So there are the three examples that I've given you last week already touch on the two pathways. So today you are going to look into the next one, and also going to be able to explain why do we need to go through commercialization stages. All right. In terms of the definition, what is commercialization all about? As being highlighted in the earlier of this particular course, we are going to look into entrepreneurship in innovation. At the same time, we will also touch upon commercialization. So there are few definitions that I've took and tried to share with you today. So the first one is from the National Center for Technology Innovation, where they define commercialization, which is a process that transforms an innovative idea into a profitable commercial products. And the commercialization also being known as a process, right? It is a process coming from research, development, and then we have commercialization before we move on into business. So in which one party, right, whether the owner of the IPs or the product, okay, which will transfer the technologies, receive money, okay, in return or exchange for giving up all or some of their rights to the technology, okay. And at the same time, commercialization also involves technology transfer, meaning that when you do make the sale of the IP, meaning that you are going to transfer the technology, transfer the innovative product which is developed or used in one unit of an organization and being adopted by another unit of that organization or another organization. So the commercialization involves a sale whereby the buyer pays the seller for some or all the seller's right in the technology, as being shown in the previous example where the Universiti Putra Malaysia sell IPs to company, and then the company will pay a sum of money and the product being transferred, and the technology being transferred to the third party, to the company. At the same time, the university also can, the entity also can transfer the technology via the what we call it as licensing. So it can be the whole part of the technology or some part of the technology. And commercialization, when we say it is a process that converts ideas, research or prototypes into viable products, okay, so that retain the desired functionality while designing them for manufacturability at low cost and launch quickly with high quality. So at the end of the program, this particular course, you're going to choose the suitable pathway for your own product in your group, and be able to identify what are the steps that you are going to take for commercialization to bring your product from research and development stages into the stage of commercialization. And then commercialization also involves formulating the manufacturing and supply chain strategies. So this is very important, where what being done during commercialization is basically you need to identify what are the raw material needed, how many manpower are you going to employ, and dedicate the team, and also to find out the supply chain strategy, whether you are going to market it yourself, or you're going to outsource it, or you're going to do different strategies in order for you to commercialize your product. So you are at this particular stage, commercialization, you're going to devise the implementation plans and implementing such plans. Okay, so hence the commercialization essentially involve converting an innovative idea, the product or technology, into feasible products in order to be launched into the market. Basically, the commercialization stage, some people, some entrepreneurs, some businessmen, as I said earlier, they avoid this commercialization stage. They straight go into selling their product straight into the market. Okay, so but this particular stage is very important, very vital. Some product takes longer period of time to go through the commercialization stage, right? And some product or company go through it fairly quickly. So let us look into the elements, the elements of commercialization, right? So I've listed down here 6 elements of commercialization, right? So the essential elements of commercialization being illustrated here, okay, which pertains to commercializing a product via technology transfer or the licensing. Okay, so the first one is the innovation itself, right? The innovative product, that's the first element of commercialization. Without the innovative product, without your invention, something novel, something new, something different in the market, you cannot go through the commercialization. And then of course the intellectual property, whether you are going to patent it, you are going to protect the name as a trademark, or you are going to have copyright in terms of the programming behind it, or you're going to have an industrial design protection. Okay, and then it goes into the commercial product. So you are going to prepare the product to become a commercial product. It's no longer a prototype, it's no longer a lab-based product. It is a commercial product, meaning that it has already been packaged to be suitable to go into the market. And then of course the stage of the technology transfer or licensing of the product itself, the commercial product itself, and you have the element of buyer and seller, right? And of course it involve monetary exchange. Those are the elements of successful commercialization, right? So if you, for example, like if you give it for free, for example, for trial, right, that is not the elements of commercialization yet. It is just as a market trial or clinical trial, where you give it out for free, or sometimes you pay someone to test your product to get feedback from them. So that is not yet an element of commercialization. Right. Let us look into the next part of the topic today, which is the path for commercialization. As I highlighted, we have already looked into 2 paths of commercialization, and today we are going to look into the other one. So from the previous figure, okay, the technology transfer or licensing is only one way for commercializing an innovative product. Okay, I've already mentioned to you the example of technology transfer, where University Putra Malaysia sells the IP to a company, and then also another example of University Putra Malaysia giving license. They license a product to a company, right? So let us look into the other one. Okay, according to Spencer in 2008, he states that there are three paths to commercializing inventions and innovative product, right? The first one is internal development and use, right? So when we say internal development and use, it is also considered commercialization, even it is being used internally, right? For example, like you have a R&D division in the company, and then the R&D division produce something that is useful for the manufacturing in the same company, in your company. So it is also considered as commercialization, right? A pathway for commercialization. And then the second one is setting up an organization, right, to exploit the invention. This is a example on the where you produce the product via spin-off company. Okay, like you have an organization, you set up another organization like to spin-off company, right, to expedite the process of commercialization, like a business arm of your entity, of your company. And then of course technology transfer to another party, or you licensing your product to the other company. All right, let us look into the one by one. In terms of the explanation, the first one is the internal development and use. All right, so this path makes sense if the innovator is working for an organization. For example, like me myself, I'm working with UPM, and then me and my team try to coming out with a procedure, improved process for student admission, for example, right? So it is becoming, and then it is being used by the organization, and it can be considered as internal commercialization, in which the organization, for example, like manufactures and sell the product invented or apply the process developed by their own innovator to make and sell products. Okay, so example here, a company like Panasonic, if the innovator is an R&D engineer, so whose job is to continuously propose and develop new ideas and concepts, for example, like kitchen appliances such as microwave, ovens, toasters, fryers, food processors, refrigerator, then Panasonic is responsible for commercializing its own innovative products without the need to pay other organization for commercialization purposes. Okay, remember, when you can use it on your own, you can also spend money for commercialization purpose, or you can also hire a third party to conduct the commercialization process, right? And then the next one is setting up an organization to exploit the invention, right? Like example being given last week, where UPM in our product, my OBE, we introduced or setting up a company called MIG Edusis to commercialize our product. So it is a spin-off company. So it is a new organization created, right, to license researchers' inventions, products, or technologies, and the organization is built on this basis, right? So a spin-off companies funds further research at institutions, where, for example, like the spin-off company, it is associated to the mother company, like MIG Edusis previously, it is associated to UPM, right? And it provide further research at the institution, right, with the aim of developing and improving technologies for licensing by organization. Okay, so researchers may become shareholders. That what happened to us. Me myself becoming the shareholders of the spin-off company together with other lecturers. So in general, spin-off requires more effort than technology licensing, but may generate bigger financial upside in the long term, because it is an option where just a vehicle for the researchers to be involved, to give some incentive to the researchers, to motivate them, to motivate the units that are producing the IP, for them to bring the idea to the market. Okay, so by doing that, basically, it is generating more long-term impact to the institution. Of course, in terms of the financial upside as well. Sorry about that. In terms of the criteria for spin-off, there are different criteria being spelled out in different entities. For example, like University Putra Malaysia, they require the researchers themselves to take up some or all of the stakes as a stakeholders, and we can also hire a full-time workers, right? So there's no such fixed rule in terms of the criteria, but I just list down here in terms of the lack of suitable receptor capacity licensee for intellectual property. It is one of the item or the reason why institution creating a spin-off, because sometimes when they want to sell the IP, nobody come in, or it will take a very long time. By introducing a spin-off, it will expedite the commercialization process, right? And then the intellectual property is a solid foundation for a new organization. Okay, when we have a company, a spin-off company that has its own intellectual property, it becomes a something that is positive, something that is can be proud of, and you can actually when you do pitching to investor, you can say that yes, we have our own IP, and it bring a lot of impact to the company. It is a potential platform for additional synergistic intellectual properties. Okay, and there is a potential for the spin-off to be a $50 million company, and also as a public organization, because you never know, a spin-off can also grow to become a holding company one day, right? And it also as a vehicle to attract funding and management, because for example, like in the case of University Putra Malaysia, it's very difficult for University Putra Malaysia itself to get investment from angel investor or from any investment company, investment agency. But as a company, a spin-off company can easily attract funding as well as management. So there is a potential for the spin-off to give returns to the innovators as a royalties, research institution, as well as the investor themselves. And the last one, the technology transfer or licensing, is basically refers to an agreement whereby an owner of a technological intellectual property or the licensor allows another party, which we call it as the licensee, to use, to modify, or to resell that intellectual property in exchange of compensation. It can be a lump sum money, it can be some periodical or in staggered form, right? The compensation may take the form of lump sum royalty based on volume of production, running royalty, or right to use the licensee's technology, or cross-licensing, meaning that sometimes when you license to a company, it is not what we call it as the just sole licensing. It can be licensed to another party, right? So it depends on the agreement with the license between the licensor and the licensee, right? And at the same time, small firms can earn substantial income from markets that they could not penetrate on their own, and large firms can have foreign affiliates without high financial and legal risk via licensing of proprietary technology. And the license may be exclusive, as I said just now. It can be just sole licensing, or it can be a more than one license, which only one organization has license for the technology, or it can be a multiple licenses being given to other companies. So, as a summary, the path of commercialization, as we have already highlighted just now, the first one is internal development and use, where established organization with its own technical expertise, R&D, sales and marketing departments, so they no need to license innovation elsewhere, where they themselves will do the commercialization process and market the product by themselves, right? At the same time, in terms of the spin-off organization, it is a new organization, licenses innovative products, long-term monetary gains, but more time-consuming, right? Researchers may be shareholders, right? And then finally, technology transfer or licensing. It can be done by making agreement with another organization to produce, to modify, or to sell the innovations, where the researchers will get paid in terms of royalties, which typically depend on the sales, right? Oops, let me just go back a little bit. Okay, and as we have gone through the path of commercialization, now we would like to look into the need for commercialization, right? So, is commercialization really necessary? Right? Is it something, a phase or a process that compulsory to be done? Right? As being highlighted here by Anderson 2011, he highlighted that without commercialization, there is usually the temptation to simply take a research that works and then draw it up and get it into production. So what will happen? Okay, maybe the research that works at the lab maybe not be working at the real environment because it has not gone through the process of commercialization. Normally, R&D will take up from TRL, technology readiness level, from level 1, 2, 3, 4 up to level 5. And technology readiness level 5 onwards until level 9 is where the commercialization process took place. Okay, although this may appear to be a big process, sometimes people will say, wow, this is a very lengthy process. I took nearly 5 years to go through the commercialization stages, and there is a what we call it as the valley of death. Sometimes a product that goes into commercialization, it will just submerge into the valley of death, where it does not materialize to become a business, right? It will just becoming commercialization and it will fail. It doesn't mean that when you go through the pathway, when you go through the steps of commercialization, you will get a success story, right? So it as being highlighted here, although this may appear to be a big progress, to please managers and investors, there are potentially pitfalls associated with skipping the commercialization stage, right? The other elements of the need for commercialization, so the reason why we need to have commercialization stages, basically we want to have high product quality and reliability, because you want to make sure the product that you prove that it works in the lab can also be worked in the real environment. Okay, you want to find the fastest time to market. This is the time to market it? Okay, is it in the month of April, or we have to wait until after the PKP, after the movement control order? Maybe next year is the suitable time to market the product. And what are the options for lowest cost? Of course, the longer you wait, you have to bear more costs because you didn't get any income. But sometimes if you go into the market too fast, your product will fail. All right, let us look at the explanation. So the first three pertain particularly for commercialization of innovations under internal development and use of a business, whereas the final one pertain towards innovations under spin-off organization and technology licensing, right? So if we look here, the real time to market, okay? So time to market refers to the length of time taken in product development process. So beginning from product idea, when the product is conceived, to the finished product, okay, you have the raw product, you produce it, you put some elements for marketing, and you have a finished product, and where the product is ready to be launched into the market. So time to market is critical to organizations due to competition, because you don't want to wait very long time in order for you to produce your car. For example, like Proton, so they have a strategy when to launch their new X50, for example. They already have X70 being launched, I think about 1 year or 2 years ago, and then they wait for another 2 years for them to launch their second product, X50, and I heard that they are going to launch their third product, which is X90, a bigger version of X70. So they don't launch it together. They have a strategy when to launch. They have a niche market for each segment of their car, and therefore the general rule is to reduce the time to market as much as possible, because you do not want to wait for 10 years to launch another car. So you have a gap of 1 or 2 years to have your product launch. So the biggest pitfall of not commercializing research or an innovative product is that the product itself will not be ready to be produced. Okay, in production quantities, it's not just one product, right? Because sometimes you have to plan how many are you going to produce in a week, how many are you going to produce in a month. Is it 1 million, or you are going to produce only one per day, or you are going to produce in bulk. So it depends on the nature of your product in the actual production environment. So this in turn will result in delays if you don't plan it properly in the commercialization stage. Later in our exercise, you're going to calculate how many items that you are going to produce. You have to plan how many manpower associated with it, and in terms of the raw material, and so on and so forth. So in which many resources will be wasted to rectify the problem and implement change order, which eventually increases the time to market. As Toyota says, always compromise both product and process integrity. So this is a warning to researchers as well as scientists, investors, and managers who are only concerned about functionality, right? So maybe when you start discussing in your group, you already figure out, what is the function that we want to put in our product? What are the things that we want to add on? So you are very excited to find an innovative product that has many functions, which itself can be compromised by poor manufacturability, right? So this is just a reminder to all of us. So the real time to market will be delayed, or the chances of product success will be compromised if no commercialization activities are carried out until all testing is done or clinical trials are completed. Organizations are often faced with the dilemma of either producing the product without adequate commercialization or postponing the product launch in order to complete the commercialization stage, which is rather unpleasant. Okay, particularly when there is a high demand for the product. So you have to make a wise decision. Okay, and research. We move on to the product quality now. Just now you see the first one is time to market. In terms of the product quality, so research or innovative products that are not commercialized are likely to have quality and reliability problem, right? Because the research prototype that work are built by highly skilled technicians and engineers who know how to make things. like all of you, right? So when you design things, if you are the person who are going to produce it, you're going to produce one, you're going to do it perfectly. But what happens if you send it to the shop floor? Okay, the less skilled workers will do it, will make it for you, and it will reduce the quality if it is not being tested under the commercialization process. Okay, with of course the sample size that are probably not statistically significant. Okay, however, the product design must be sufficiently robust to be consistently built in production environment. So you have to do test after test and perform well in all anticipated user environments. The next one is cost reduction. Statistically, 60% of the product cost is determined by the concept. When you do design, you have a concept design, the conceptual, so you have already determined the 60% of the product cost. However, the chance to attain the lowest possible cost is ignored when the product concept is based on research prototype. Okay, it is not the actual prototype, the commercialized prototype that we want. So cost reduction activities are not possible after the parts of the product are designed based on the research prototype, and implementing change orders will waste valuable resources and compromise product and process integrity. Okay. Furthermore, researchers, scientists, and investors design products primarily to optimize functionality and make parts to fit into the product concept, and they overlook using standard off-the-shelf parts, because sometimes when you do design, you forget that sometimes you may just buy off the shelf certain parts. You do not have to build it from scratch, because it's much cheaper. And because at the end of the day, when we talk at manufacturing level, you want to make sure that the end product itself, when you calculate the cost, the cost per item, or the product sale value, basically you have to calculate all the materials that are involved, including the manpower, the material, the hours, electricity, and so on, so that you can know, yes, the product can be sold at one ringgit or $1, okay, after taking into account of many things, right? Or can you reduce it to 50 cents by buying off the shelf parts instead of producing it on your own? Such innovative products often require customized and unusual parts, and sometimes with cost and availability problem, which in turn delay time to market. Because if you are relying on parts that are coming from overseas, let's say in the COVID-19 situation, some material cannot be imported, some parts cannot being produced by your suppliers on time, that will of course incur cost to you. So in contrast, commercialized products begins with thorough searches and selections of off-the-shelf parts, and the product will be literally designed around the off-the-shelf parts. So parts which are readily available off the shelf are a key element, right? Remember, you do not have to design and build every parts of your product. You can just buy off the shelf things and assemble it in order to achieve the fastest time to market, lowest cost, and highest product quality. And that's what we want in terms of the producing an innovative product through the commercialization stages. And finally, in terms of money and reputation, commercialization is important in order to motivate researchers, scientists, and investors to produce better ideas and innovative products. An innovative product is likely to generate monetary rewards if it is commercialized. And commercialization also helps enhance the reputation of researchers, scientists, or inventors. So as what happened to me before, when I managed to sell my own product, the one that I do research, I develop, I commercialize, and I manage to do business, it is a self-satisfaction. And so we have gone through the mill. So this is just one good example. There are other products that I've gone through, doesn't manage to go through the commercialization, it doesn't pass through the commercialization stages, and of course it doesn't go through the business stages, right? So it will make things easier to attract funding from the government or potential investor for future research. Remember, I give example of the vacuum blood container that we managed to obtain 5 million ringgit grant from the investor to help the company to produce the product at the commercialization stage before they go into the business stages. The product development as a researchers has established potential investor for future research and product development as the researchers has established himself or herself as one who produces useful research. Okay, organizations that license the researchers' inventions are likely to help support future research. So the money that being used, the sale money for the license, the royalty, the technology transfer being used to support the future research. So more grants can be provided to other researchers. Okay, in order to gain, where is it? Okay. Basically, where I think, in order to gain access to graduate students, because you need money to have students be involved in your research and participate in R&D development relevant to their business. Okay, so that's all for our lecture today. Let me just end the sharing session so that we can have Q&A, right? So now I would like to open up for Q&A.